Hello and welcome to RadioTimes.com's Oscar predictions for 2024. Today we're going to be talking about the main acting categories, Best Actor and Best Actress. And it's safe to say that in at least one of these categories, there's still a lot of debate to be had, I think, between two people in general, and that's Best Actress. So we've got Emma Stone on the one hand for Poor Things, Lily Gladstone on the other for Killers of the Flower Moon. Now, James, there's been quite a few shifts in momentum in this kind of Oscar race so far. Who do you think's gonna end up taking the award?
Oh, it's so difficult, isn't it? They're such different performances and they're both so acclaimed and they've both sort of won bits and pieces along the way. I think, going into BAFTAs when the nominations came out and Lily Gladstone wasn't even mentioned, I think maybe people started to think, oh, Emma Stone, and she sort of had this run. But then recently the SAG Awards, Lily Gladstone took it, and obviously that's the Actors Guild. So you start to think, okay, the actors really like her. In terms of the way the Oscar voting, works, that sort of goes in her favour. So if I had to put money on it, I think it would be Lily Gladstone, but it's so difficult to call.
I do wonder if, in the end, Lily Gladstone's kind of BAFTA snub has maybe ended up helping her in a way, and it was seen as so egregious, how she didn't even get a nomination, that I think a lot of people have kind of really rallied around her. And, I think, again, it would be a very deserving win, and we all know that Oscars kind of often, it goes for a narrative as well as a performance, and I think in both those cases, Lily Gladstone is a good winner. Emma Stone has won the Oscar before for La La Land a few years ago, and that's taking nothing away from her performance, but I think there is maybe the feeling that Lily Gladstone would be a more kind of historic victory.
Yeah, definitely. And also it's a slightly different performance perhaps than the Oscars have sort of favoured in the past. I mean, I think the Oscars have tended to go for sort of the big performances at times, whereas it's a really small performance. It's a really sort of nuanced, subtle, textured performance that I think, not to take anything away from Emma Stone, because she's being asked to give a big performance and she does that brilliantly.
Yeah, it does kind of almost highlight that in many ways, as much as we kind of enjoy the kind of speculation about who's going to win what, it does kind of, I think, point to how it is kind of a slightly futile task separating performances, especially when they're so different performances in such different films. Because, Lily Gladstone gives exactly the performance you want in that film for that character. Emma Stone, in Poor Things, it's a very out there, it's a very kind of, eccentric performance in a kind of film that is quite whimsical and very unnatural. So yeah, it's almost silly to compare them, but we like doing it. It's fun, the fun of awards season.
Exactly, and I mean that sort of difference in performance again sort of I think leads us on to the best actor category, where at the moment I think it seems like Cillian Murphy's a little bit of a not maybe as much as some other categories, but he does seem very much on the way. And that again is quite a sort of a subtle performance. It's not a big showy one. There isn't the big speech moment. There isn't, sort of major prosthetics or anything like that. It's a fairly by the numbers subtle performance, but just done really, really well.
Yeah, and also I think, for a while there was a thought that maybe someone else, I think Paul Giamatti was in the running, was possibly going to take that award. But I think the fact that, we're expecting Oppenheimer to be generally awarded very well across the board, I think it would be such a shame if it won so much and Cillian Murphy himself wasn't rewarded, because he is very much the kind of at the centre of the film for the entire film, and it's all kind of revolves around his performance. And I think, it's a complex role, and he nails it. He just nails it, as you say, without being too showy, without kind of. Yeah, I think it's just such an intelligent performance.
I mean, with the Paul Giamatti thing, I mean, not to take anything away from his performance in The Holdovers, he is really, really good in that movie. I just do think it is interesting that even at the height of sort of his momentum, I suppose, which was maybe a month back, it seems to have dropped off a little bit recently. I think even at the height of that, people were still talking about, okay, well, maybe the Oscars will give it to him as sort of a career thing, as like a retrospective. You've done so much good work over so many years, and kind of this is the culmination. So it's not just for The Holdovers, it's for his past body of work. But even sort of bringing that into the conversation would perhaps suggest that people do think ultimately that Cillian Murphy's performance is the stronger one.
Is the stronger one, yeah. And I think, to be fair to Cillian Murphy, he's got a good body of work as well in the past. Maybe he's a little bit younger than Paul Giamatti, so that's what was it, yeah. But yeah, no, I think, I love The Holdovers. I think Paul Giamatti is really good in it. And again, it's like a good balance of a kind of comedic performance, but also a really heartfelt, like, dramatic one as well, and I think he nails it. But yeah, I do think Cillian has the edge. The one other, there's a few other contenders, but I think the one other nominee who I want to talk about, because he was seen as kind of maybe an early frontrunner even before his film had come out, is Bradley Cooper as Leonard Bernstein in Maestro. And, this is very much the kind of performance that you might expect the Oscars to go for. He's playing a real life figure, as obviously Cillian Murphy is as well, but it's kind of, he's got the prosthetics, he's doing an accent, it's an Oscar performance. And I think he does a good job. I do think he's kind of become the butt of a joke in some ways in this Oscar campaign, which I don't think is entirely fair. But yeah, he does just seem to have lost any momentum that he ever had of winning this.
No, I think that does sort of show the fact that he's become the butt of a joke, does show the way that attitudes have changed towards the types of performances that these award shows are recognising. As you say, this would have been classic Oscar fare a few years ago, and it still is. Obviously, he got the nomination, but the fact that he's not really being mentioned that much as an actual contender, and as you say, people are just sort of, laughing about how much he seems to want the award, says something, I think. Yeah.
But I mean, I think, to be fair to him, his performance is definitely better than a couple of not so long ago, like, Oscar winners, like Gary Oldman, brilliant actor, but his Winston Churchill, I wasn't convinced by. Rami Malek is as Freddie Mercury as well. And I think these are kind of more like cartoonish impressions than Bradley Cooper is in as Bernstein, but he kind of seems to have, it all seems to have kind of, I think this build-up of resentment about those kind of performances having won in the past have maybe kind of then been projected onto him.
I think there's also maybe something about the fact that it really is a two-hander of a film, and I think Carey Mulligan does somewhat outshine him.
I agree, yeah.
And it is a slightly subtler performance, and you can kind of see the difference between the two, and so I think maybe that sort of lends into it as well.
Yeah, just very quickly, the other two nominees, Coleman Domingo and Jeffrey Wright for Rustin and American Fiction, respectively. I think, these are both good performances. I don't think they really have much of a chance of causing an upset.
Well, I think particularly with Coleman Domingo, just the fact that Rustin hasn't been sort of nominated in all the other categories, I think always sort of lends to, American Fiction obviously has been sort of nominated in a lot of categories, but it doesn't seem to be picking up many of the actual awards on the night, does it? It seems to sort of be nominated a lot, but it's not getting over the line, as it were.
So who do you think will win the top acting prizes? Can Lily Gladstone beat Emma Stone to the punch, or will the Poor Things star get her second Oscar? And can anyone stop Cillian Murphy? Let us know in the comments below.